everybody. Just in time for the holidays, Climate Diet is thrilled to announce the release of our new plant-based cookbook, The Power of Your Plate. This beautifully designed cookbook collection features 80 delicious, climate-friendly recipes, from tasty appetizers and refreshing drinks to hearty main dishes like mushroom Wellington and crowd-pleasing desserts such as vegan pumpkin pie and chocolate wacky cake, one of my favorites that was sent to me from my Aunt Margaret. Every recipe is simple, satisfying, and perfect for anyone looking to eat healthier or discover just how flavorful plant-based meals can be. But this cookbook does more than inspire great meals. Your purchase directly supports Climate Diet's consumer education and community outreach. As we continue teaching families, students, and communities about the powerful connection between food choice and a healthier planet, this cookbook is for you. So whether you're shopping for friends, co-workers, The Power of Your Plate makes an uplifting, practical, and planet-friendly gift. Order today at Amazon.com, and it helps to continue the important work that we do, one delicious meal at a time. Happy holidays. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Climate Cuisine. My name is Jane DeMarines, and I'm the Executive Director of Climate Diet, and we are the hosts of Climate Cuisine. And I'm so happy to have with us today Michael Jantz-Moon, the owner and manager of DC Vegan Restaurant and Catering. And I know, Michael, we had a fundraiser there a year and a half ago, I think, and it was so great. The food was spectacular, and the setting was spectacular. It was just a wonderful, wonderful event. Michael, thank you so much for making that event such a really lovely experience. And the food, of course, as always, and we love your food.
Oh,
It was
thank
great.
you.
So why don't we just start off food is so important to climate, in my view, because,
Mhm.
and you know this, animal agriculture is contributing, some of the top scientists in the world say 75% of greenhouse gas emissions. Not everybody agrees with that, but when you add in the food that cows eat, I think that's not often included. So the food they eat and the grazing and cutting down trees, I don't know. It's a huge thing. So people like Michael, like you, that are doing your part to give more people the chance to eat great food and understand a little bit more about their own personal impact on the climate, I think is huge.
Mm.
So welcome. And why don't you tell us just a little bit about your own background in coming to be a vegan and starting a vegan restaurant?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me today. We started out as the sister company of Cleveland Vegan. So I'm originally from Cleveland. Our best friends in Cleveland started Cleveland Vegan in 2011. They were doing so good in Cleveland. We were hearing about all their success, and they had originally started out as a catering company. That we started looking at this market and doing some research, and we realized that there wasn't a plant-based catering company per se in DC at the time. This was 2014. We took their best practices, some of their greatest hits that they had success with on their menus. We decided to start DC Vegan Catering. At the time, they were Cleveland Vegan Catering. We launched in January of 2015 as DC Vegan Catering to try and fill that niche in the market. And saw, we plugged in. Our background, we're both artists. My partner, Leah, who's our CEO, and my wife, she came from academia. Has a PhD in public policy and public
Oh,
administration. I was a
awesome.
musician my whole life. she was also an artist. She's a dancer and does performance art, and we've collaborated on tons of performances and projects over the years. I had some success in the arts and music. I was fortunate enough to tour with Paul Simon and Brian
Wow.
Wilson, and
Wow.
played with open for Barry Manilow and BB
Wow.
King and Jeff Beck and the Black Crowes and Space
Wow.
Hog and Train and all these bands. And so I had this career for about 25 years. And then as my partner was kind of finishing up grad school and about to receive her doctorate, I was sort of looking for something, a job to do, and decided to start a business. Had some other business ideas, but like I said, our best friends in Cleveland, we're doing Cleveland Vegan. And I was going back and forth from Cleveland helping out. I also do have an event background and a fine dining service background because as a musician, you're working in restaurants a lot. So I was going back and forth from Cleveland, working on events that my friends were doing and seeing their success. And I was looking for a business. So we decided to open DC Vegan in 2015, started as a catering company, started out at a commissary kitchen called Union Kitchen here in DC, which was sort of a food incubator
Yeah.
situation. And
I
we
familiar with
started
that.
out with maybe like a 4 foot prep table and some under storage and some dry storage and a couple shelves in the walk in. And we scaled our business up to the taking the largest footprint in Union Kitchen out of any business by 2017. We landed a food contract at a music venue in Maryland that was looking for a business to do food for their concerts. And at that point, like our business has grown, and we were looking for our own kitchen to do our catering out of. And so we partnered with this music venue in 2018, and we're doing the food for their concerts and doing our catering out of the kitchen, and sort of learned how to run a restaurant while we were there. And then, of course, the pandemic hit. They couldn't do any concerts anymore. We were able to relocate back to DC in 2020. I think we signed the lease in December. And by 2021, we opened up at our current location on P Street in DuPont Circle.
Yeah, it's a great location.
It's so nice, such a beautiful neighborhood. And so
Yeah.
we were fortunate enough to find this location, and we have our restaurant and sort of grew the restaurant. We're leasing the whole building. So it's a 3-story building. We had offices on the 3rd floor for our catering company, and we had our sort of deli at the time, coffee shop, deli, cheese shop on the 1st level. We opened the first vegan bar on the lower level, had some success with the vegan bar, ran into some issues with some facility problems that were reoccurring. And right around the same time, the new administration came in 2025, and we started to see a lot of folks losing their jobs in the government.
Yeah.
We decided in February to restructure because we wanted to get out ahead of the potential recession that we forecasted that was coming from all the job loss in DC.
Yeah.
So we restructured, we subleased the bar space that we had to a queer-owned pizza shop that's recently opened called Protest Pizza. Wonderful folks doing really great work there. We restructured the deli into a full service restaurant. And so we do full service lunch, brunch, dinner. We do Fiesta Fridays, the Mexican themed menu every week now. We do special events. And then we open our third floor. We partnered with a larger catering company in the area. We formed DC Vegan Events with them. So we sort of expanded our footprint as a catering company into an events company. So now we can do 2,000 people events and galas, and we are vertically integrated with staffing. And so we were able to kind of scale that business. And then we opened up our third floor. We opened up Peace Tree Yoga, which is a brand new yoga space. We opened in February of 2025. My wife is also a long-term yoga practitioner, and we thought it kind of goes really well with the wellness. And we were just, so we kind of welcomed that community into the building. And so here we are closing out 2025. It's been a wild year, lots of changes, lots of great things happening. And, we found whenever there's strife, whenever there's challenging times, like there's always opportunity in those times as well. So in the pandemic, we were able to scale our business during the pandemic to open that space in DC. And here, with the occupation and with the government shutdown and, lots of federal jobs being lost, we were able to, restructure our business and open yoga. And
you've clearly been very strategic.
So I think that's part of the opportunity that we have as business owners. And, it's a lot about pivoting. It's a lot about listening, and it's a lot about strategy. So
I think it's a lot about great food too.
Yeah, and the food, of course, right? So that's why we're here.
Well, so let me pivot a little bit and start asking you a few questions. But I love hearing your story and how strategic you have been in changing it to fit what has been a really disappointing environment in our city for so many people losing their jobs, and how you've managed that and grown in new ways. So, I know DC Vegan, it's earned a reputation as one of the top plant-based restaurants in the region. So I kind of asked you what inspired you to start it, but what were the gaps in the food landscape that you were trying to fill? You kind of answered the other part of it, but did you see that there wasn't
ours
food?
Was sort of, it was like an inductive process. So as we were doing the catering, what we discovered from doing the catering and doing events is that most folks at those events, they weren't vegan. So if we did a wedding, maybe the bride and the groom were vegan, but their family wasn't vegan, their friends weren't vegan. A lot of times they wanted to share their ethos with their friends and family and to show them how good plant-based food can be. And so over the years and years of doing this, I guess the inductive thing that we learned was that by us creating approachable plant-based food, comforting food, normalizing great tasting food that just happens to be vegan, and doing it in a way that is familiar to folks, that ended up becoming like the secret sauce.
Yeah, like the lasagna.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely delicious, and I don't know, is it vegan? I guess it's vegan, right? But you're not thinking that way when you're eating it. At least that's my experience.
Exactly. And so, we actually end up feeding a lot of mainly non-vegans at the restaurant, just like we end up feeding a lot of non-vegans for catering and events. So normalizing just great tasting food with familiar textures and that's approachable, that is really what's become our form of activism. That is how people can bring in, their dad or their uncle or their sibling or whomever who maybe hasn't had a plant-based meal, and they have to go to DC Vegan because it's someone's birthday, or they're going out and they have to celebrate somebody and they prefer plant-based food. But what happens is these folks come to the restaurant, they come to the events, and they leave saying, if I could eat that way all the time, I would be vegan. If I could eat this food all the time, there would be no reason that I couldn't be vegan.
Well, I'm going to ask a question. You kind of answered it partly, but maybe you could expand. Your restaurant isn't just about great food. It's part of a broader movement towards sustainable dining. So how do you integrate climate-friendly practices into your menu sourcing and operations?
Well, as you know, just by being plant-based is the most climate-friendly thing that we can do.
Absolutely.
So we tell folks in terms of events, that there's no better way to green your event than to make it plant-based. Not only is it the best way to green your event, but it's the best way to reach everybody on any level of diet. So you could be Jewish, you could be Hindu, you could be, it's like the lowest common denominator. Everybody can eat plant-based food. There's no diet restriction in plant-based food inherently, unless you've got an allergy. So I feel like just right off the bat, that is the best thing that we can do for the climate, is just to serve plant-based food. In terms of sourcing, we work with a lot of other plant-based companies. So we have a whole cheese program that's all plant-based cheese makers from all over the country. We work with a really famous vegan baker, and we feature their baked goods and in our dessert programs. We really work to decrease our food waste. We work on reusing ingredients and across multiple menu items so that we can decrease food waste. We really work on accuracy with our recipes.
That's
so that
awesome.
We're not throwing a lot of food away. So we try and minimize food waste. Unfortunately, one thing with being in the city is we don't have access to composting. Composting is actually cost prohibitive for a lot of businesses in the city because it's not subsidized. So there's no incentive. It's just a private marketplace, and unfortunately it's cost prohibitive. But we don't have any animal products in our space. We ask our staff not to bring any animal products in our space. We use ingredients that don't have chemicals and preservatives. We don't sell Coca-Cola. We don't have products with high fructose. So we just try and use our dollars to support ingredients and businesses that kind of share our ethos, and it sort of creates an ecosystem.
Well, you're definitely going to vegan heaven. Let me ask you another question. That's very impressive. Your whole strategy of trying to not waste food by planning your menus more carefully or carefully. But let me ask you another question. Many people say they want to eat plant-based, but they worry about taste or convenience. What do you think are the biggest misconceptions about plant-based food? And how do you challenge them at DC Vegan? I think you've already answered the second part of that, but maybe you could answer the first part in terms of biggest
I mean,
misconceptions.
it's interesting because it sort of takes us down a whole rabbit hole of why are there misconceptions to begin with. And unfortunately, I think that our food system, and in some respects, the USDA and our government and lobbyists, I think people work really hard to muddy the water for plant-based eaters. I think they work really hard to keep the status quo.
Well, certainly
So,
the meat industry pays money to run campaigns
mhm. So
that
you see the
are against
attacks.
plant-based meat.
You see the attacks on plant-based foods. You see the attacks on in the UK, for example, they're going after where they can use the word milk or they can use the
Oh,
word
right.
burger. And there's only one reason for that, and it's to maintain the status quo.
Yeah.
So I think overcoming that barriers is kind of half the battle because in my experience, once people do have a good plant-based meal, if they do have a good experience just eating something that happens to be plant-based that tastes really good, they're really open to it because who doesn't love great food? So I think great food kind of speaks for itself. And I think we work really hard at DC Vegan to be consistent and to, like I said, normalize great tasting food that just happens to be plant based. And I think if people can have that experience, then people can talk about that experience. They can talk about how wonderful that lasagna was, or that king trumpet mushroom calamari was, or
I'm getting
whatever
hungry.
whatever it may be. And I think the so comes down to a big barrier is I think food is culture, and if people are sort of indoctrinated into not wanting to try something or thinking something's weird or isn't going to taste good, then you don't want to do it. But I think there's so much great plant-based food options out there. I think there's so many tricks you can do. You and I, when we were emailing, we were talking about Thanksgiving and what can you do for Thanksgiving? And, maybe it's too much to ask folks to reinvent their whole Thanksgiving meal, especially if they're omnivores. And I think that's where the cultural implications come into Thanksgiving. But, you can make your stuffing with veggie stock and earth balance, and it'll taste so good because earth balance is it's like a oil-based butter.
Yeah, we use it.
So
Yeah.
it's like if you use some unsweetened almond milk or oat milk and earth balance in your potatoes, bam, they're vegan.
Right.
If you use earth balance and veggie stock, and there's like even like chicken flavored veggie stock that you can get, or beef flavored veggie stock, or
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't know about
so
that.
you can get that and cook with that, and it like tastes the same. You literally can't tell the difference. So I think like one thing that folks could do that would be a good start is, even if you are having an animal product for Thanksgiving, you can make all your sides plant-based.
Yeah.
You
I'm
can,
making mushroom Wellington,
right.
which my non-vegan daughter, who's coming to visit, said, "Oh, why don't you make that?" And so she's not vegan, but she requested that. So I was surprised. So that goes to the taste, right?
Right. And, it's such a delicious thing that you can have. So, my family growing up, we used to have like the traditional Thanksgiving and with the turkey and the stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. And then we used to repeat that meal for the Christmas season. And after Thanksgiving, a lot of us were kind of over that meal and we didn't want to have it again. So then we sort of reinvented what the Christmas meal would look like for our family. So we would do things like lasagna, and we would do things like or pastas, or all kinds of different things. So I think you can achieve with your Wellington, for example, you can achieve those same flavor profiles by using a lot of those same seasonings, right? You can use
Right.
the thyme and the rosemary and the real like autumnal seasonings to flavor that. So you're sort of in the same realm as you are, having the turkey, but you just have something else. Or you could add in, like I said, a veggie lasagna or something. There's a lot of ways to be creative that you can be inclusive. And I think there's so many delicious products out there for folks that it's easier than ever to be able to do. So even if you do keep that main product, even for folks that, Uncle Bob, wants his turkey or whatever, you can make the whole rest of the thing plant-based and it's
These are
still
good
going to be just as
suggestions.
delicious. And you leave some of the stuffing out of the turkey, you cook it on the side, and it's inclusive. Everybody wins. You use the earth balance on the roasted carrots. Yeah, I mean, there's just all kinds of products that you can use, and you can't tell the difference. It's going to be just as good.
So I wanted to ask you a question on a different topic, and that's using plant-based food as medicine. And it's being used in 6 public hospitals in New York. Eric Adams, and I'm sure you know this. What's your view? Do you think enough people know how good plant-based food is for your own health? And my family had that's how we became vegan. Clogged arteries, quintuple bypass surgery from a family member, and our daughter gave us the China study. We read that. It's like, we ought to be, well, we were vegetarians before we became vegan. But
Mm-hmm.
so do you have any comments about how healthy it is for you? It tastes great. We know that people that are vegans and have
Mm-hmm.
had great food know that. But
I mean, again, I think it comes down to access to information. And I think that there's no disputing that if folks eat a whole food plant based diet that's low in oil, you don't eat a lot of sugar, you don't overindulge in the salt. We know that there's a diet called sugar, oil, salt free, SOS plant based diet that can literally reverse heart disease and diabetes. So the information's
yeah,
out there. I feel like in biomedicine, maybe, which I guess goes to medical schools, I don't think there's a lot of discussion about food, and even though we all sort of watch those cartoons and things growing up that you are what you eat, I don't think that people really put it together that what you eat really impacts your health. And again, I think it goes back, there's so many factors. There's culture, there's socioeconomic factors, and people, that may not have access to healthy food or don't have stores that have fresh vegetables and produce.
Yeah.
There's the barriers of how we grow up eating. And I always say, like, once we learn to cook plant-based food, once you know how to cook it, it's super easy. But
Yeah.
learning how to cook it, transitioning from throwing baking a piece of chicken to baking a piece of tofu or sauteing up tofu or whatever, you have to learn how to do that. And it's like anything, it is easy once you know it, but there's definitely an educational barrier there. And so I think hospitals, I think our food system really relies on this antiquated distribution and cultural model. So, like in your hospitals, you have these giant food companies that are staffing and running the cafeterias, right? Sodexo and Cisco, and there's all these giant food purveyors that run a lot of those. They have the biggest government contracts, they have the biggest school contracts, the high schools and elementary schools, whole states, right? And these companies, they don't have plant-based food. They don't cook with plant-based food. They don't have plant-based milk options. So I think it's just such a systemic issue, because it comes down to our food system. And then it comes down to these giant multinational corporations that are essentially in bed with the USDA and our government and lobbyists and agricultural lobbyists and dairy lobbyists. And
Well, there are some lobbyists on the other side, though. There's the Plant-Based Food Association, Plant-Based
Mhm.
Food. I've gone to some of their events. I mean, they're tiny compared to like the meat industry.
Mhm.
But well, while I'm bringing that up, since you've had a thriving catering service, do you see any trends of people choosing more plant-based options for
Yeah. So we're seeing the biggest trend, which is so cool, is that folks are, like, non-vegans are buying vegan food, and it's mainly environmental.
Great,
So we're seeing that,
great.
which is really cool. So we're seeing folks that maybe have a vegan wedding, but they're not actually vegan. They just want to green their event. We're seeing,
This is good news.
it's great news. It's so cool to see. And we're seeing climate events at colleges and for businesses and organizations that are starting to put it together, that they're having this event and it should be plant-based. Oddly enough, they weren't always plant-based. Climate
This is good news.
conferences traditionally had not been plant-based. So we're seeing that more than ever, with folks just learning to shift those meals. We're working with religious organizations that want to serve more plant-based food. So I think the word is getting out there. I
Do you
think,
think it's generational? My
oh
two,
yeah,
the
for sure.
younger, I think there's some surveys out of Rutgers saying people 15 to or 18 to 30, I don't know, it's more than half say they intend to reduce their meat consumption and are leaning toward more plant-based. Anyway, it's positive for the plant-based.
Yeah. I mean, the younger folks are more open than ever. All kinds of our friends have kids, and even if their family's not plant-based, like they've had enough plant-based meals that their kids are, it's just normalized, they
That's
just know
good
that
news.
it's okay to have a vegan meal, and it's really fun. And so yeah, I mean, i'm I'm hopeful. I feel like we're moving in the right direction. I think in the media landscape that we're in, sometimes it might not feel like that, but we have a real boots on the ground business, and I see it every day. And
Well, why don't you talk about that?
Climate
You seem to be, your catering business and restaurant seems to be a hub for community and advocacy. So is there any event where you felt the restaurant made a real impact beyond the plate?
I mean, I think we do it every day, and it's just in little small ways. It's just that, like I said, that family member that eats there for the first time, that maybe has their first plant-based meal, or that wedding or corporate event, or something where somebody maybe literally, that might be their first plant-based meal. And we take that very seriously, because we want that to be a great experience. Because if that's a great experience, then I feel like that just opens the door to realizing that, they can have another meal plant-based, and it might be a great experience too. So we see it every day. I see it anecdotally with folks coming in who had to change their diets because of health issues. I see folks coming in every day that are allergic to seafood, or have a really serious anaphylactic seafood allergy, and they can eat at our restaurant and know that they're going to be completely safe. I see it with folks who come in and they might have a dairy allergy and they're lactose intolerant, and they can eat all the food, at our place. And so you just across all kinds of different demographics of people coming in for all kinds of different reasons, and they leave happy, and they keep coming back, and they keep trying new things. And then they try the cheese, and then they try the entrees, and then they're trying the cashew parmesan on something, or the almond ricotta with something, or they're getting oat milk in their coffee, and they love their coffee. So, there's just every day, it's just such a gift. There's so much opportunity, and so much goodness.
Interrupt here because we're going to run out of time, but if you can answer one last question by just offering any tips to our listeners on how they can reduce their climate footprint.
Well, I would say, just for one, just being open to all the incredible options out there. Give a plant-based butter a try. Try oat milk in your coffee. Try almond milk on your cereal. Try to make it through a day without eating an animal product. Try meatless Mondays. Try wellness Wednesdays. Go to a plant-based restaurant. I think there's so much opportunity out there. And then obviously the biggest opportunities: come to DC Vegan, eat some banging food, come say hi, and let us show you how great plant-based food can be.
Absolutely, they should do that. You're a top restaurant. Your food is so great. And it's such an inviting atmosphere too. As I said, I'd like to come back and have another fundraiser on that middle floor.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So, Michael, thank you so much for being here and sharing your insights for the extraordinary work that you do at DC Vegan. Your leadership shows how food businesses can spark real cultural change, which I think you are doing, one dish and one conversation at a time. At Climate Diet, we see restaurants like DC Vegan as essential partners in helping communities embrace healthier, climate-friendly choices. So thanks for joining us, Michael, and we hope today's episode inspires our listeners to explore the power of their plate.
Amen. And thanks for all you're doing, Jane.
Thank you. We'll be in touch.
All right. Thank you.